Morning, everybody, and welcome to our affiliate webinar that's now post the budget. So fairly audacious budget, I would have thought, and the great thing about it is that it's about as bold as a government's going to get, and it's caused all sorts of controversy. And I haven't heard one commentator that's obviously all for it and very positive about it. Mark Burrows said something very interesting that, you know, there's really, in his opinion, there's two types of budgets. That there's budgets that actually are there to grow the economy, and there's budgets that are there for wealth distribution and grabbing tax, which is exactly what this budget is. So I mean, obviously we've all got our opinions in terms of the flaws that are in it, but for the purpose of today's webinar, that's kind of irrelevant what our individual opinions are about the actual budget itself. The most important thing about the budget is, given that it is definitely the most audacious budget that we'll see from a government, and yet still our clients are perfectly positioned for it. And also, as a result of it, it's opened up a whole gamut of opportunities, not only for our existing clients, but also for new clients. So let's pick this apart a little bit. So obviously the government's quite desperate. They're desperate for a tax grab. They're a spending government, so therefore they need more money. The spending has created inflation. We then get penalized for inflation with interest rates as well. So, you know, I mean, we could call them incompetent, but, you know, there's a pattern there where that's where the government is, obviously that's the way in which they're behaving. So if the economy was growing really significantly, low interest rates and a growing property market, I've said to you guys a number of times that that's very frustrating for us, because everyone is a property expert. And that it always seems to me that when I watch those cycles, that those people get bitten when they actually aren't investing for long-term strategies and cyclical of the economy, and also accounting for situations like this, where the government has obviously just, you know, got a budget that is all about, you know, taking tax, and they're all about spending. So, I mean, yes, it's got to get through the Senate yet, and all those sorts of things. Now, from a capital tax point of view, from capital gains tax, I'll probably spend less time on that today, because it's easier to solve, and it really is not going to have a very big impact on the long-term strategies that we create for our clients, because any properties that we are looking at from a resale point of view, or from, you know, leaving the actual portfolio in the future, is actually superannuation related, which is obviously unaffected, and about consolidating debt in the existing portfolio. Or then again, you could actually live on the debt across the assets in the portfolio at that time. So I'm going to spend less time on that, because those strategies we've been working with our clients for a long time, and minimizing capital gains of what it was then. It's just even more so we're going to focus on those strategies with our clients moving forward. Now, can you appreciate something that I've said to you in the last webinar, is that a government can't just axe negative gearing. And in 1985, the Hawke government did that, and it really affected rents way too much. And I think you can all see now is that if negative gearing is wiped clean completely, number one, and obviously if it was, you know, if that was grandfathered all the way through, and then every single person that's got an investment property can't negative gear or make those claims on their taxation anymore, then there's obviously going to be a disaster across the property market. And just so that you guys are aware, around about 2/3 of the bank's lending is in the residential property market, and they're running at about a 60.5% loan to value ratio. Now, let's just go through historically just a little bit about why the government can't just axe all of this stuff, because this is the guiding light that I've lived by for 30 years of my whole career. This is what I've taught people from stage, and this is what I've taught my clients. And this is why we're still in a very positive position now with our clients. So basically, back at in the Great Depression in the 1930s, the liquid assets to deposit ratio was anywhere between 5 to 6 times. And so we saw what happened when there was a run on the banks, right, back then, when the deposits just weren't there. And that's why our grandparents, you know, they were notorious for, you know, hiding cash in the house and under the couch and under the mattress, and, you know, dug a hole in the backyard because they just didn't trust the banks. Now we're in a situation where there's $12 in equity capital for every $100 worth of risk. And those risk assets are obviously in the form of loans. So $12 for every 100. And then given that residential mortgage risk is around about 25 to 30%, that means that for residential lending in the banking sector, it's $12 to every $300 to $400. So that's a 25 to 33 times, right, that they don't have. So it would be a monumental disaster if the government implemented policy that not only affected rentals, which then causes unaffordability for literally living and putting a roof over one's head, but also affecting the median house price so much that then that would actually have a diabolical effect on the banking system. And if, just to cast your memory back, the banks also guaranteed, they're putting guarantees in place in the GFC for banks, and they've now done across all APRA registered banking institutions for deposits up to $250,000. So it would be a massive knock-on effect, right, all the way through, and it's just, it just can't be done. And so that's why whenever there's been talk, like for example in 2008 with 𝗀𝗲𝘀𝗀𝗀𝗀 talking about axing negative gearing altogether, and that was very successfully shot down in flames by 𝗀𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀. Whenever it's come up as rhetoric, it's just never bothered me, because when you zoom out and look at actually how that would function in the market, and then how the banks would obviously react, that's why it would just never get through. Even if the government was that stupid to try and implement that policy, and with all the pushback from the private sector, it just wouldn't get through the Senate. So essentially, that's why the government's done what they've done. Now, what's interesting about this is that the government are saying that they believe that there's going to be a supply shortfall. They've admitted a supply shortfall of 35,000 homes from this budget. Now, here's the thing. They haven't done anything about migration. They need the migration to continue expanding the GDP. Otherwise, we will go into recession. So they haven't done anything about that. And right now, we currently need anywhere between 85,000 to 100,000 new homes built every year just to accommodate the migration factor. So we're already out by minimum 50,000 homes by the government's obviously calculations. And that's why none of this is obviously making sense for a long-term solution with what they're trying to do. They're literally putting band-aids on place so that we don't hit the $1 trillion debt mark, and so that we don't go into recession under their governance. But they still want to continue to spend, and so therefore they'll continue having the migration come in, and then they'll obviously band-aid in other areas. So there's this factor that's come up about rentals. The government's saying that they only believe that rents will go up by $2, whereas when you look at all the numbers, it's minimum 2.4%, right? Not $2 per week. So it's obviously there's a lot of holes, right, in obviously what they're doing, and there is still a massive demand for builds. So what's really interesting about this? Who are the winners and who are the losers? Well, the winners are clearly going to be anyone that are in areas where there are new builds. So they're either investing in new builds, or they're in an area where there are new builds happening. And so that's why for all of our clients, we're sitting very, very nicely. We're sitting very nicely for rentals, and we're sitting very nicely for obviously the properties we've invested in, because we're still getting the maximum tax benefits, and we'll continue to do so in those areas. The areas that are not going to do so well, and they're going to be much more affected by this, are in those lower affordable price points that are going to be in more regional areas that are established properties that we're getting higher yields. Now, when you're in a regional area with a higher yield, if you're getting a 6% yield, for example, in a regional area, well, the reason why the yield is higher is because the capital growth hasn't been so good. So those areas are definitely going to suffer now. And so for those people that have invested in those types of properties, we can definitely see those properties start to hit the market, because they're going to realize that they're not going to be able to afford it without the tax credits, because they haven't got any real other tax credits on those properties to help them with their cash flow. They've really been leaning hard, and with the interest rates continuing to go up, they're really not going to be able to afford to hold those properties. So those properties will go down further. So are there population growth in those regional areas? Well, of course there are. There's population growth in all areas because of obviously the migration. But we've always looked for where is the maximized migration and where is the maximized gentrification actually happening. And that's why we look at the corridors in which we have. And so that's why we had such a fantastic result during COVID in Southeast Queensland. And then in the years following in 2023, 24, and going into 2025, the northern and southern growth corridors in Perth have been fantastic. And now look at Perth now. It's very, very, very hard to actually get a block of land in Perth. You have to prove that you're a resident there or that you've got a job opportunity in Perth and you've got to be moving to Perth. So that's created a lot more demand, a lot less supply, and it's obviously having upwards pressure on the rental yields, but also the capital growth, and another win for our clients. So just to remind everyone, and the reason why our clients are sitting in such a great position, and we will continue to do so moving forward, is that we've never budged from our policy. The area that we go to must have a minimum rental yield of 4%. And so that's why that's ruled out predominantly New South Wales. A lot of my career is ruled out a lot of areas in New South Wales because it also has to be getting maximum gentrification. So to be going into an area in New South, for example, you got maximum gentrification, you're not also getting the minimum 4% yield and vice versa. So it's always been predominantly 3 states. It's been Victoria, Queensland, and WA. Doesn't mean we don't assess all states. We assess all of Australia all of the time because all of the tax laws, whether they're retracted tax laws or current tax laws or future tax laws, they're Australia-wide, they're federal. So there's no point ignoring any market. But when you're looking at maximised gentrification, which means the expansion of population with young working people, so whether they're young professionals or they're young blue-collar workers, whether young families or couples, or whether there's singles and couples, young professionals, either or, we're expanding in that area with that population growth, and the area is needing to construct new properties to keep up with that. So that does 2 things. One, it meets the higher demand versus the supply. That's why they're new. And the second thing is that we're maximising the tax benefits and therefore the cash flow in those areas. Thereby, that obviously has a continued demand in terms of the capital growth and rental demand, but also the developers, whether they're developing an area with construction of buildings. So for example, there are pockets in town planning where the state government working with the local government says, right, in this area, we want to build higher density buildings that cater for an uptick in 10,000 people that we're going to move to this particular area. So there's a master plan, and they roll out that master plan. And what the developers do with every single phase that they roll out, whether it's a new building or a new stage, or they might only release 10 apartments, right, in that particular building that they're selling off the plan. When they release the next 10, they always increase the price. Guaranteed. It happens every single time. And obviously the same thing happens with land. And as I've said to you guys many times before, the top 5 land developers are controlling currently about 300,000 blocks right now, and they control the release of supply. And every time they release 10 lots as a stage release, every single one of those lots are increased in price, and it doesn't matter what's happening to the government policy, it doesn't matter what's happening to interest rates, it doesn't matter what's happening for the rest of the world. They will continue to increase the price per square metre. And so that's why it's always been the policy to go to those areas. And I can't tell you how many times clients have come to me, and it seems to be in particular in phases where the interest rates are low and the market's booming, is they say, oh, look, I really want to find a 3-bedroom house. I want to be able to build a granny flat out the back, and I want it to be within this distance from Newcastle or whatever the case may be. And I always say to them, look, I'm the wrong guy, right? Like that we're not going to do that. You need a buyer's agent. Go and pay someone $20,000 to go and source that property for you, because that's not us. It doesn't fit the model that we've always taught people. And the model is always around, maximizing the capital growth, maximizing the cash flow, and being able to minimize the risk. And minimizing the risk includes when a government has an audacious budget that is all about wealth distribution and maximizing, how much money that they take from people's tax. So as a result of all of that, there are a number of different factors that are happening that we're seeing already. Already, the builders are increasing their pricing. So, and I think I've mentioned to you, the cost of construction is still going up. This budget doesn't change the fact that the cost of construction is increasing. If you have increasing interest rates with increasing inflation, the labor costs go up. But also, if you're importing products from China for construction, which we absolutely are, there are around about 260 categories where they don't get the VAT rebate in China anymore. So there's 9% straight away that the wholesalers actually have to include in materials. So we still have, with a high inflation and high interest rates, we're still going to have increasing costs of construction. That is not going to change. Then we've got the fuel and diesel to boot, right, as a little added bonus on that. So straight away with this budget, the very next day, we saw across the board builders increasing the pricing, right, of their builds straight away, right? They did it immediately. We're going to see the same thing happen with land developers, right? They're going to be definitely in their next stages and their stage releases. They're going to be increasing pricing. And there's an opportunity here, by the way, and that's why I'm telling you guys about this. And the same thing when we actually are looking at anything off plan with respect to townhouses and apartments as well. So just to remind you, when I say apartments, I'm not talking about towers and CBDs and all that sort of crap. That doesn't fit the model because it's oversupplied. Right, so that obviously it's very, very hard to make money when there's more supply than there is demand. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to areas that are unique, boutique, where there's an attraction to the area for a particular reason. It could be a master plan, but either way, there's a lot of young professionals wanting to move to that area, and there's a release of supply by the developers, and it's a very particular type of product, right? There's a particular type of stock that obviously they're releasing. But either way, that you are going to see now with next releases that are coming from developers, land developers and builders, that the pricing is all going to increase. And that means that anything that we have already secured for our clients through the developers and the builders, we're already being able to secure it and maintain it for our clients for the next short period of time at those original pricing, because they're all moving their prices. Because all of these new builds, all of these new areas where they're doing apartments and townhouses and houses, we're all going to see growth markets. We still have a shortfall of builds. We still have an increasing in population with migration. We still have an increase in the cost of construction. And yet, there's going to be obviously affected areas with those established properties 100%. So we're going to see multiple speed economies and multiple speed markets. We're going to have micro markets that are successful and growing, and then we're going to have micro markets that are obviously floundering. And the government still hasn't even addressed, what are they going to do about rentals, right? And about the cost of renting. So I don't think that this is finished. I think the government's definitely digging their heels in, all right, about the budget. But the reality is that, I mean, look at just on capital gains and all of the entrepreneurs that have come out, because it obviously is going to affect them, right? With obviously them building a company from scratch, and now they're getting obviously seriously affected with their capital gains. I mean, it's really a can of worms. Like I said, it's a very audacious budget. But either way, from my client's point of view, as an organization, our clients, yet again, we've guided them very, very well. They're all sitting in a very, very good position, and they're on a really good position now to make a new move, right? And so it's in these times that as an organization, we become particularly busy. Now, I want to reiterate something. Given that we are very experienced dealing with new builds, and we're very experienced in dealing with builders, auditing builders, sourcing new builders, and managing that whole building process a lot over time, and same with obviously new construction with developers, there's going to be a shift. You're going to see that there's going to be buyers agents, and there's going to be potentially some of our own direct competitors that are going to be sourcing more new properties than established now, because of obviously the shifts that you're going to see in the market. And they're not going to be anywhere near as experienced as we are. And it's a good opportunity for me to reiterate to all of you that Tim, our CEO, heads up the team that literally go and source new builders, new developers. He audits them. He actually goes through a whole process where he actually assesses their construction quality and all the stages of construction with, you know, such an intimate knowledge that he has in construction, because that's his whole background. And I just know for a fact that other organizations don't have that skill set. And so we have not only that skill set to assess new builders and new builds, and same with developers, but we've got pre-existing understanding as to who to stay away from. We've got a pre-existing understanding as to who actually got a much better track record. And because in all of these new constructions, nothing ever goes to plan, nothing. All right, so in WA, for example, the builders are very, very good with their level of quality construction, hopeless with communicating the stages of that construction, which can, you know, cause a little bit of anxiety for our clients. But either way, the end delivered product is actually very, very positive and very, very high, and the value of the product was very, very high. But either way, it wasn't perfect, right? So they ended up with a really good product, but during that construction phase, the communication wasn't great. Then there's other situations where, you know, mistakes are made, or there are unanticipated sort of, you know, milestones or, you know, hurdles that actually have to be overcome. And it's all about how those builders actually respond to it. And obviously, Tim and his team monitoring that whole process. And if they need to become involved, they'll become involved. But the point is this: there's going to now be inexperienced buyers agents and people in that space that are going to be looking at new builds now and looking at, you know, newish completed properties, because it's got to be obviously in a completed period, right? There can't be something that's actually already finished. It's got to be obviously under construction. And if they're intending on entering that space, they're doing so with obviously without all of that experience and without obviously that industry knowledge, right? Without that. So already we're seeing our, you know, our clients are coming to us, and they already know, based on the fact that we've educated them on the opportunity that this is created for them, because of obviously the experience that we have, and because of our skill set, and because of our already established relationships. So we're pretty excited about this. This for us, we'll be busier now for the next couple of years than we would be if the interest rates were on the way down and the market was booming really hard, because this is really where our skill sets and our experience shine a lot brighter. It's not that our clients don't benefit when the market's booming and the interest rates are low. Of course they do. But all of a sudden, everyone knows best for some reason during those phases, because it's very easy to make money during that time. But the problem when people don't take advice during those phases is that they're not thinking about worst case scenarios, like a government with an audacious budget that takes, instead of actually looks to see how they can build the economy. And so we're already pre-prepared for that. We're already positioned for that. And that's why it doesn't matter where we are in the economic cycle, no matter how extreme those cycles are, our clients obviously will benefit from that. So we're already getting that from our clients now. We're already busy. And I want to reiterate to all of you, for those of you that now, my opinion is that you'll likely be doing a lot more new build financing. There'll be a lot more in self-managed super as well, because obviously that, you know, it's obviously inshallah, right, to what actually happened from this budget somewhat. And there's going to be a lot more opportunity for us to be giving proper guidance to your clients now. So I want to reiterate to all of you that, you know, obviously you're in good hands. If you've never referred a client to us, just remember, like, you only have to refer one client, sit shotgun and see how we handle that client and the strategy we give them, and ultimately where they go, to give you that confidence so that you go, yes, this is an organization that I feel like my clients are in much better hands. But you're going to realize now that the guidance that we give our clients, the way we educate them, and what we're actually showing them as the baseline of obviously the you know, the investment strategies that we're working with, are much more relevant than ever, right, for residential property investment, much more relevant than ever. And that includes the transition to retirement strategy, which is where we talk about capital gains tax so much and about minimizing or eliminating it. So the fact that capital gains tax has increased doesn't actually affect our clients, because the plan was never to sell those properties in their transition to retirement anyway. right? It was actually a different plan. And so that's why in every respect, this budget didn't affect our clients in a negative way. It affected them positively. And so that's why we're already getting them calling us saying we need to meet up. I'm sure there's opportunities that are coming from this, and there are. So the immediate opportunity right now is that we have still stock on our list that the builders and developers have agreed that we can retain at the old price, because there are price increases coming across the board, and you're going to see it nationally. You're going to see cost of construction increase, and they're all going to take the opportunity to obviously start increasing their prices. It will happen in all of these new construction fields, because that's what the government with their budget is actually encouraged to happen. All right, so the immediate opportunity right now is obviously the pre-existing stock we have. And as I said, at any one stage, we've got anywhere from about 200 to 300 items of stock on our list that have been fully researched with our city score reports, that are all in these areas that obviously meet the 3 criteria, and that are ready for us to present to clients, as long as obviously it matches them from a numbers point of view, matches their income, matches their strategy, matches where they are in terms of their land tax position, and spreading them out across multiple states. All right, so pretty exciting for us. Not surprising, right, as a budget, but it's just exciting to see that when a government has such a ridiculously audacious budget, that's just quite insane, really, that our clients are in the perfect position, right, for it. And so it fills me with enormous amount of confidence, and I'm pretty chuffed about it. All right, everyone. So please reach out to us so that we can have a chat with your clients to get some guidance. And even if they're just a little bit nervous, it just can't hurt for us to have a 5-minute phone call with them, because this is really where we get to shine. All right, enjoy your day, everybody, and we'll see you for the next month, Tuesday affiliate webinar. Thank you.